social slime, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force them air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social slide, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear, fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one thinks countries lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Game On here on UCY.TV, and it is the 27th of December, 2015, getting close to the end of the year. So I'm hoping that everybody had a pleasant holiday, whatever you wish to call it. I know we don't really celebrate it like we used to. You can't do too much research before you figure out that that's another bit of deception that was fed to us over the years, taking us back to the idea we've been lied to since the day we were born and continue to be so today, even more so than maybe we were before, because they just keep ramping up the propaganda. So, I hope everybody did have a good time. I know I got to see some family I don't see as often as I should, and that was nice, and a couple of really nice dinners, and got to play with some little kids, and it was okay. So as we get into the end of the year, we're going to see what they have in mind for us for the coming year, and I would think it's just going to be a continual ramp-up of what they've been at for the last few years. So I would think it's going to get strange. Now, I saw a report, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it up here or not. I haven't had a lot of time to look at what's going on here. I'm going to take a look through here, some of this. So see if I can find any news here. Now, I know Trudeau made some Christmas talk or whatever regarding his thoughts at Christmas, I guess. And he doesn't have too many of his own thoughts, maybe what pair of socks to wear. I'm not even sure if he's capable of that. These people are really stupid, and if they weren't really stupid or really evil, they wouldn't be in the positions they're in. That's pretty obvious. All you have to do is go back and look at some history. So we know that our new prime minister is as phony as the last prime minister. So everybody got so sick of the Conservatives and Mr. Harper that they thought it was best now to get a hold of Mr. Trudeau. then vote him in and see if he can't do a better job than that evil Mr. Harper did. Now, I'm not saying Mr. Harper isn't evil, but to say that Mr. Trudeau isn't evil, well, you're not paying any attention. So anyways, my understanding, I don't have the story in front of me here, I must have buried it already, but I did see a little bit about the fact that I think I mentioned this on another show, that they want to make it so that you can't say anything negative about Muslims or Islam. Now, this brings us right back to the Jews. When you want to use that kind of power, it's pretty sad. I mean, they got a whole drawer full of templates, or a shelf full of templates. And so that template worked really good for the Jews over the years. You can't say anything negative about a Jew. It's anti-Semitic. So now they're bringing in the same rules for Islam and Muslims. So, this is supposedly, the West is supposed to be built on the idea of Christianity. Now, again, I don't care what you think or what you don't think. It don't matter to me. I'm just telling you how they lay this stuff out for you. We, not you and I, but the evil ones at the top of this hierarchy decided they're going to take over North America and run those people off the lands that were already here. Now, they could have just as easily worked with them. And my understanding from reading history is that basically the first people that came here, the settlers, if you will, those who conned into settling the land so that the investors could have a legitimate claim to the land. My understanding, going back in history, is that the settlers really didn't have a problem with the natives. Okay, they really didn't have a problem with them. I mean, here's some people that live on the land, that understand the land, understand the animals, understands the lakes, the rivers, and trees, and all the rest of it that was here that the settlers had to contend with. And they didn't have a problem with the natives, and the natives, I don't think, really had a problem with the settlers. But both of them, both the settlers and the native people, were under the gun from these so-called investors, the kings, the queens, the pope, and so on and so forth, the lawyers, the bankers, the evil ones, if you will. And they're the ones that always play the divide and conquer game, right? Because as long as the natives and the settlers are getting along, well, we got a problem, okay? We're overseas, and if these people are getting along, well, chances are our claim isn't really going to hold. So we have to divide these people to conquer them, and that's what they did, and that's what they did again with the Jews. You can't say anything bad about a Jew, or you're anti-Semitic. You're nasty. You're less than. So now they've pulled this out for the Islam. So I was looking at a Canadian. It looks like a Canadian Jewish news site earlier this morning, and that's exactly what's going on. This Jewish news, CIJ, I think it's called, is doing the same thing. Now they're saying that now all of a sudden this idea of you can't say anything negative about a Muslim or Islam is kind of rubbing the Jews the wrong way. Apparently, they don't think that's right. How can that be? And even in this Jewish newspaper, it says, well, Trudeau only mentioned Islam and the Jews and the Muslims. He didn't mention any other religion. He didn't mention other religions being hammered or being discussed in a negative light. He only mentioned the Islam and the Muslims. Well, this is no good at all. Well, wait a minute, Mr. Jew. Right? Isn't this the same template you guys been using on us forever? And now you don't like it when it's turned on you. But then that brings us back to Mr. Pike, right? And if we buzz over to Mr. Pike, it says here, World War III, the Zionists and Muslims to destroy each other. Albert Pike's Masonic plan about to begin World War III is to be formatted by using the so-called controversies, the agents of Illuminati operating under whatever new name as are now being stored up between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Muslim world. That war is to be directed in such a manner that all of Islam and political Zionism, Israel, will destroy each other, while at the same time the remaining nations, once more divided on this issue, will be forced to fight themselves in a state of complete exhaustion, physically, mentally, spiritually, and economically. Albert Pike, circa 1871. Now, that's exactly the plan. Okay, that's the plan. When I was talking to the Muslim youth here, I don't know, it's got to be, geez, I must be getting on 4 years ago. Little town, 7,000 people, and the Muslim youth out of Maple, Ontario, where they're stationed, but they're also stationed out of Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is the center of North America, and it's also the home of the International Institute for Sustainable Development, the IISD, which Morris Strong set up with some of his buddies. And there's lots of videos out there about the dark side of the Parliament buildings, or whatever you call it, in Winnipeg. All these ley lines or ley lines and all that kind of stuff that Masons supposedly use. But when I was at that meeting, and thankfully I was the only one there, set up in our library, so all of these Muslim people, these Muslim youth, but they weren't all youth, they had their handlers with them, some older Muslims, and we had a really, really good chat. And I was explaining to them how they were being set up. They're told that Sharia will be the global law, and that Islam will be the global religion. And, you say, well, you say that anybody that, Islam says basically that anybody that, that worships the creation and not the creation is an apostate. Well, what do these Muslims think's being worshipped here, okay, through all of this environmentalism and global warming, climate change shit, okay? It is a move to worship the creation, not the creator. So how is it you people are so stupid, you people of Muslim faith, Islam, how is it you're so stupid you don't get this? I mean, I don't get how you can be that stupid. And I tried to explain it to them. It was a very nice conversation. We talked for at least 2 hours, I think. And they, no, we're Islam will be the world faith. Well, no, because the world faith is going to be a pagan earth-worshipping religion, of which you say Islam is exactly the opposite of. So where do you get this idea in your brain that Sharia is going to be the world law and that Islam will be the world faith? Nothing could be further from the truth. So how do you get sucked into this? Oh, propaganda. Just like the rest of the people get propagandized and believe what they've been told. So you know damn well that Islam is not about a world religion. Is it about the destruction of all religions and to put the world back into the religious wars? And the Zionists, well, I mean, all you have to do, where did Israel come from? It was born out of the World War II, along with the United Nations. Okay, so Israel is not a good place. Israel is just another setup. Israel is just another templated piece of garbage. Okay, and but that gave them power. But now that power is not needed anymore, because Israel is not really what you would call, I mean, they're Zionists. They're not into worshiping the earth. So they're there to take over the earth. Right? The Jews are not supposed to have a home, and that's what they set Israel up for. And that was supposed to spread across the nations and basically take control of the world. Well, now we have Islam in the picture. Now Islam is supposed to be the world faith and to take over the jurisdiction of the world. And that ain't going to happen either. So all we're setting up is a big scrap built on templates they've been using for centuries. Now, I don't know why people are so stupid that they can't get any of this stuff. It's right in front of your face. I gave that talk about windmills. That's 5-6 years ago now. And I don't know why I said that at the beginning of that presentation. It had nothing whatsoever to do with windmills. But for some oddball reason, this stuff came out of my mouth about World War II and about Islam and about Christianity and about the earth worship and all this kind of stuff before I ever got into talking about windmills. And it kind of took me aback because I'm supposed to be talking about windmills, and all of a sudden all of this stuff comes spewing out of my mouth. It turns out I was absolutely right, because I went to the Muslim youth meeting probably 2 years after I did that windmill talk or green energy talk. And so, but these guys are absolutely believers that they're going to have world law will be Sharia, and world religion will be Islam. And anybody that doesn't bow down to it, well, see ya. They make no bones about it, right? Either you bow to Sharia law in Islam and Allah, and if you refuse to do so, well, you're dead meat. Now we're building mosques all over the place, and this is supposed to be, a Christian nation, as all of the Commonwealth nations are. But then you would have to ask yourself the question: well, if we're a Christian nation, and why are we embracing all of these mosques and Muslims and Islam and Sharia law? What the hell's going on here? Well, it goes back to what I've been saying for so long. You can't get your world government with Christianity still on the map. It's got to get eradicated. So we start the wars. We're back to the religious wars. We're back to the insurrections. That's what we are. It's a spiritual, psychological war. That is World War III, and World War III started exactly the day that World War II ended. Actually, it was planned before the end of World War II. It was planned probably before the beginning of World War II, because they go to their template drawers and go, okay, what if we use this template after that template? Okay, works for me. And yet the people, I think the main problem with the people is too many of them are convinced that they're humans. I think that's the biggest problem. Okay, you've been soiled. You've been colored. You're not a man. Okay, you're not a man. And I think that's most of the problem. We've been psychologically nutted, if you will. We're not men anymore. Men used to stand up to the invaders. Men used to stand up to treason. That's what men do. They protect their homeland or their homes or their house. But we don't do that anymore because we're convinced that we're humans, which is not a man at all, is merely a color of man, which is a weak position. Okay, a very weak position. You're not men anymore. You're a color of, a hue, a shade of a man, a ghost of a man, if you will. But you're not a man. Man would have never let this stuff get through. A man would have never let any of this stuff get through. But they just keep grinding away at us, and men would stand up. Humans go, well, there's nothing we can do about it. They'll just do whatever they want. Doesn't seem to matter who we vote. They just keep doing what they want. That's the actions of a human, not the actions of a man. You know, so I guess one of my messages for the coming year is man up, boys. You know, lose this human nonsense. You know, these nations are based on the King James Bible. And again, I don't care what you think about any of this stuff. It's just the way it is. Just the way it is. Now, we're gonna the King James Bible, and I keep saying this, and I keep asking people, just go get the damn search engine, right? It's kjvbible.net, and start chucking words in there. It's a search engine. And 2 words you will not find in the King James Bible are human and legal. And a bunch of other words that are used constantly you won't find in there either. Okay? You'll also find statements like, let no man deceive you. Well, obviously, if some man has now labeled you as a human and you accept that, well, obviously you've been deceived. Then once you've been deceived, well, you're going to be treated like cattle, chattel, and slaves, which you are. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. It's not hard to wrap your brain around. You know, there's stories coming out of England now that England is no longer a Christian nation. Well, then we're in trouble because the whole idea is they got to kill Christianity and the American Constitution. Don't forget the American Constitution. Even though that was a hoodwink as well, but people believe in it, therefore they must destroy it somehow, right? I mean, they were told it was their constitution. They were told to uphold it. They were told to protect it. So even though the evil ones that brought it knew exactly what they were up to from the get-go, it's so ingrained in people's heads now that they protect it. They believe in it because they were told to believe in it. Well, now they got everybody believing in it. They need to get rid of it. Okay? And that's why you have all of these things like, your freedom of speech is trashed, your gun rights are trashed, or they're trying desperately to trash them. So we're in a state of chaos. And what comes out of chaos? Order. Well, who created the chaos? The ones that won the New World Order. Okay, and what is the New World Order? It is a group of men and women who control every aspect of your lives, every resource on the planet, and you will bow down not to Allah, okay, not to God, not to Jesus. You will bow down to the trees and the rocks and the rivers. And these are all the things that those who are in control will control. Okay? Your very existence on this planet depends upon the trees and the rivers and the animals and the soil and the minerals and so on and so forth. So now this small group of men and women sitting in their house of Babel, if you will, control it all. Well, what does that make them? That makes them God. And if you don't bow down to God, well, you ain't getting any water. You ain't getting any food. Okay? You ain't going to catch a fish because you have transgressed against them who are playing God. It's really quite simple. So we most definitely have to man up here because time's a ticking, if you will, and the clock is ticking. And as they have indebted the world, I don't know, the last number I heard was, I don't remember what it was, not too many trillions to count and too many trillions to ever, anybody still thinks they're going to pay down the debt, which is an impossibility because every time you do anything, more debt is created. And the interest has to be paid on the debt, which there's no money to pay the interest because there's no money. So the whole idea of that was to get the world into a position that they had to do a restructuring. Okay, and the restructuring they're working on is once they have control of all of the resources on the planet, then they intend to allow you adequate, this, that, and the other thing, but of course they decide what is adequate. And adequate is a moving target. It can go up, it can go down, it can go way, way, way down until you're groveling in the dirt eating grubs, which, they do enough propaganda on that as well, into the universities and that. They got them eating bugs now like it's a good idea. So that has to get dealt with. We in the West... We in the West have to get our heads straightened out. The idea of multiculturalism was just simply to mess everything up. Okay? That's all it was about, is just to, if everything, if you have a pot of water or something and it's just sitting there, it's pretty stable and it's pretty calm. If you stick a ladle or a stick or whatever it is you want to stick in that bucket of water, and you start stirring it around rapidly, all of a sudden all that calmness disappears. And when you look at the bucket, all you see is chaos. Okay. And that's all they've done. So while you're stirring the pot really quickly, if you start to add different colored dyes or different particles, while you took that calm bucket of water and started stirring it viciously and started adding things to it, when the water settles, you don't have what you started with, okay? It's been reordered. Now, that's all they're doing to us. I mean, people are really scratching their heads as to what's going on. Well, it's exactly what's going on. They're just messing with you from every angle possible. Your health angle, your education angle, your food angles, your air angles. They're coming at us from everywhere, spinning them waters, and when those waters settle, we're going to see what they had in mind for us, or we're going to get our hands on their stir stick and we're going to stick it where the sun don't shine. And maybe spin them on the end of the stick and swirl them around a little bit, but the deal is we got to get a hold of this thing, and we got to stop this chaos. Because if we don't stop the chaos, there will be an order, and it won't be an order you're real happy with when it's over, because they will have taken everything lock, stock, and barrel. And you say, well, they can't do that. Well, of course they can. I saw a video out in, it was on somebody's Facebook who I know, and I'm just going to look at the story of it here real quick. It is a whole bunch of people, and the video goes. The heading of the video. Where are we at here? Why doesn't this play up right? Okay. This is not okay, is the name of the video. Now, this is shot out of Shawnigan Lake, British Columbia. Now, I know Shawnigan Lake because I was there. We stayed there for about 2 weeks. And apparently, I read a little bit about this story before, and they're running in sludge or something. I don't know what the hell exactly they're doing, but they're messing things up there. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of tons of some kind of toxic sludge in there, and the people are protesting, and they're saying this is not okay. Well, it depends from what angle you're looking at. It's perfectly okay because it's a corporation. Now, they're arresting people here in this scene, and lots and lots and lots of police. They're lined up everywhere. We got this showdown with the people and the police. And, is your paycheck worth poisoning our water, the future? Who cares? Save our water. These are the protesters. And here they have two policemen picking up some poor bugger in a wheelchair and toting him off. Oh, there's three of them, two on the handles, one on each side, toting some guy off in a wheelchair to put him in a van because he has to save our water. Now, that's the police, and this is really upsetting the people, of course, but they're not going to do anything because they're humans. Okay? Now, there's a lot more of these humans there are of the police, but they can't deal with it, okay, because they're fearful. And they don't seem to understand, and I would imagine an awful lot of these people in this protest group here are environmentalists who have no idea what it is they're promoting. They have no idea that the sludge coming in is part of the environmental movement. Okay, right? They got suckered into save the planet. They never took the time to understand who's saying that and for what reason they're saying that. Okay? They just sucked up the propaganda. Now that they're pristine, it's a beautiful lake, by the way. It's a wonderful lake. We were supposed to be there 1 week. I had a sales crew there, and we rented I don't know how many rooms in kind of a motel, and it was an old motel because there wasn't much going on at Shawnigan Lake. A very quiet place. There was a school in there, which I think might have been a Jesuit school, but that's beside the point. But a very pristine place. It wasn't overdeveloped. It wasn't even developed. There was one new motel complex on the other side of the lake. Where we were, it was just, probably built in the 50s, maybe 60s, wooden structure, wooden balconies and that, overlooking the water. I mean, we were right at the water's edge. We were on the beach. Beautiful place. All the canoes were there to use and whatnot. And so we were only supposed to be there a week. And my partner, he came over from Vancouver and wondered, what the hell's going on? How come you guys ain't done this promotion yet? And said, look around. We're in no hurry to go anywhere. So we stretched the 1 week out to 2 weeks just to enjoy the place. So now these people are watching their pristine atmosphere being basically destroyed in front of their faces. And they're talking about government. Our government's not treating us well. Well, they're not your government, are they? Okay? They're your slave masters. You don't have a government, okay? Plain and simple. You're not part of the picture. You're an asset for the corporation to feed off of. But the idea that the police are there to protect you is laughable. The police take an oath to the head of state to protect the state. So whatever the state decides to do, it has every right to do. Okay, if it wants to firebomb your home, it's got every right to do so. You may not like it. You may protest it. You may get angry about it. But history says you're not going to do anything about it. You're just going to whine and bitch and complain and phone up your MPP or your MPP and whine and bitch and complain. Well, we'll look into it. Well, I don't understand what they're doing either. We'll look into it for you. Oh, well, I was telling the MP, he said to look into it for us. That's a good thing, right? Holy God, people, wake up. What's it take? What does it actually take to get people motivated? And I think the biggest stumbling block is this idea of being a human. I really do believe that is the biggest stumbling block. They've taken your man, woman away from you. You are just a piece of nothing, really. Well, we're humans. Well, you just go right ahead and be a human and see how you end up being treated. Not happy? Too bad. Like there's a really pathetic scene in this particular video when I see three policemen. I mean, all this guy's sitting in his wheelchair. He ain't ranting and raving. He's just sitting peacefully in his wheelchair with a "Save Our Water" sign. And three policemen pick up the wheelchair and go and stick him in a van somewhere. Just doing our job, folks. Just doing our job. Don't look at us. We're on your side, but there's nothing we can do about it. We're just doing our job. How far away is that from lining the people up in front of the pits? And throwing them in the pits or shooting them into the pits. How far away are we from that? Apparently not too damn far. So we're going to have to man up a little bit. And again, I'm not big into violence, but we have to be aware of what's going on. And I do believe we can stand them down without a whole lot of violence. We need to put the scare into them, not vice versa. What these people should have done, instead of standing in a quiet line with their signs, is they should have just marched right into the police line and started arresting them. And we need more of that. The people are starting to come out in larger groups, thankful for that. But they're still standing down, like they are under these guys in these blue and black outfits. When I see signs like "Save Our Water," "Save Our Trees," it really irks me, because they're not your trees and it ain't your water. Okay? You're a subject of the state. It's the state's trees. It's the state's water. In reality, it's not, because apparently God created man and gave us dominion. Okay, and then man turned around and God gave us law, and then man turned around and turned us into humans and controls us with this thing called the legal system, which everybody seems to be fearful of. So it's all ass backwards and inside out, upside down, and it's got to be corrected. No, it really, really bugs me when people say "save our." It ain't yours. Okay, you live in a legal system. You are a subject of the state. Okay, that means you're in servitude, right? And you act like you're in servitude at these protests. You know you're in servitude at these protests. All you got to do is watch the people at the protests. They hold up their little signs and they watch, like in this case, this gentleman, I think it was a man, or a human, excuse me, because a man would have, if the other men and women there would have never allowed that to happen. But the humans just kind of stand back and go, "You can't do that. I'm going to put that on Facebook." And watch one of their own be picked up in a wheelchair and toted off and put in a van. I mean, if you can't stand up to these boys in blue when they're picking up somebody in a wheelchair who's got a simple little sign that says "Save Our Water." And I want to, I want to give a shout out to the police, the three police too. I want to give a shout out to them. I don't want to forget those guys because that shows, how low you can go. Oh, look at Jimmy. There's a guy over there in a wheelchair with a Save Our Water sign. What do you say we go get him? Well, I don't know. Do you feel threatened? Well, I don't know. He's in a wheelchair with a sign. I don't know what he's going to do to us. Well, you go wheel him over there. Well, I ain't doing it by myself. Take Sam with you. You better get Ed too. Yeah. You three go get the guy in the wheelchair and put him in a van. So I want to take my hats off to the boys in blue. You are a brave bunch, huh? A really brave bunch. I don't want to say you make me sick. I think you could do that on yourself by your own selves if you go look in the mirror and analyze what the hell you just did. I think maybe you could come to that conclusion yourself that you are about as low as you can go, and that's what's going on. This is going on everywhere. People fighting pipelines, people fighting windmills, people fighting these huge solar farms. People fighting the idea that the Chinese are buying up our land. They're not really buying it. They hold the debt. So they're coming to collect on the debt. And again, that wasn't by mistake. That was definitely not my mistake. That was a long-term plan. And everything is coming at us now from every angle. And yet people are still out there talking politics. Talking politics? Give me a friggin' break. I went to that dinner, a family dinner on Wednesday night, and two of my brother-in-laws come stomping over to me. They think I'm a radical. They think I'm a conspiracy theorist. Of course, they get all their information from CBC, CTV, Fox News, CNN. So they're a really well-informed pair. And, they come stomping up to me. And I made my wife a promise that I wouldn't bring up any of this stuff over the holidays, and I didn't. And but they come up to me and they go, "Well, Ron, what do you think about this Donald Trump guy?" And I'm thinking, we don't live in America. That's my first thought process. We don't live in America. So why ask me such a stupid question? Because see, they can't. One of the reasons they do this is they cannot bring themselves to look at the mess this place is in. Okay, so they distract their mind because they don't want to deal with the reality that's going on. So they're deflected down into the States. I just explained Donald Trump. What the hell you care about Donald Trump for? Right? He's just another mouthpiece like Ron Paul, something for people to rally against, and don't be and don't be surprised if he does the same thing as Ron Paul just prior to the election drops out. Don't be surprised at all. And they're going. I was really impressed with my one brother-in-law because I don't think he had a clue what he was saying. In fact, I know he didn't have a clue what he was saying. He's saying, Donald Trump, he just says whatever he wants. Well, and is there a reason you can't? Well, he just lets go with whatever he means. And don't you? Of course you don't, because you're afraid. Okay? If you got something to say what you mean and mean what you say, and that's it. You have every right to do so. If it bothers anybody, well, then go away. Hit the road. But I can't say anything bad about Allah, and I certainly can't say anything bad about Sharia law, and I certainly can't say anything wrong about Muslims, and I certainly can't say anything wrong about the Jews. Because, well, I might get in trouble. Because they're passing legislation saying I can't do that. So they're playing God. Well, they're not God. Okay? They're a bunch of manipulators. That's all they are, is manipulators. And they've manipulated us into some pretty rotten positions. And we need to just get out from that. And the easiest way to do that is say what you mean and mean what you say, and that is no. No, we ain't doing that shit. And no, we ain't going to pay you anymore. You're not going to feed us off us anymore. And, these are our lands. This is our water. This is our trees. These are our trees. These are our minerals. All the people that work in the mines and that and work in the bush and that, I mean, these are always normally temporary jobs. I guess the coal industry was pretty steady, but they've shut all that down now. So even that was temporary. So all we are is hewers of wood and drawers of water. That's all we've ever been in these lands. That's all we've ever been allowed to be in these lands because we don't control anything. We don't have control over our local water systems. We don't have control over our local resources of any kind. So when the large corporations working with the state decide they want some lumber or something, they go in and pay these ridiculously low stumpage fees or mining fees, claim fees, and extract that stuff. And we, the ants, who like to dig in the dirt and that, pull these resources out. And we get a wage for it. We don't get a percentage of the value of what it is that's being taken out and sold. We don't get our cut of it. We get a wage. And when they're done with what they're doing, they leave, and you got nothing to do. Even though there's lots of resources there, you're not allowed to touch them. You're only allowed to work as the laborer for the large companies to extract out of your community for their benefit. It's always worked that way because these are friends of the state. And the state rules all. So they think. So they try to explain to us. The fact is they really don't have any authority. They don't have any right to any of these resources, any more right than you do. In fact, you have all the right to it because that's where you live. And you were given dominion, and you were given, control of all the resources of where you live to benefit you, your family, and your neighbors. But that's not how it's ever worked. It's always worked that these outsiders come in and extract for their benefit and the benefit of the state, and usually leave a big mess behind for those people who actually live in that neck of the woods and have no right to the resources for themselves. I mean, that is so incredibly ridiculous that we ever allowed these things to happen. But we're not in charge of anything. What does that say? Oh, okay. What do you want? Sorry about that. I just, my wife was just on the phone with a friend of mine, Enos, that has to go back to court on Wednesday. And he was part of this, he's a desperado now. He's a Canadian desperado, I guess. He's a terrorist. He's a now I don't know if he does. I don't know if he dislikes Jews and Muslims. That'd be just another tag. I have no idea about that. But I do know he's a terrorist. And I know he lives here, so that means he's homegrown. He's a homegrown terrorist. He has a share in a farm that produces milk. And, well, obviously that makes him a terrorist, doesn't it? And they've used helicopters, machine guns, and all kinds of crap. Yes, I'm talking about rural Ontario is what I'm talking about. So after the show is over, I'll have to give Enos a call because I'm looking for him. I suppose the easiest way to find Enos would be call the OPP because they keep arresting his sorry ass. And this time I think they crossed the bill here because Enos did go to the hospital and has a doctor with a claim of possible permanent nerve damage to his wrist and his shoulders. And of course, he deserved it. He deserved it. He deserved everything he got. He had this stupid idea that he lived in a free country. He had this stupid idea that milk came out of a cow and you could drink this stuff. That was a really stupid idea, and so on and so forth. So he deserves everything he's gotten. But he did go up to the court in Owen Sound and talk to a justice. And while the justice said some of these charges wouldn't stick because that's just the way the police are, that there's more than enough evidence to bring forward charges of assault on these guys. And the reason I want to get a hold of Enos, you see, you can, in this wonderful land we call Canada, you can bring about a private prosecution. Otherwise, you're asking the police to charge the police, and the police police the police, so there's not much chance of that happening. I've tried it, and the police, even though they know they're breaking the law, they admit they're breaking the law, well, who's going to police them but them? So, they got a free ride on this. So Enos did get this justice to say, yes, there's enough to bring forward. So he's going to bring forward charges of assault on these police, which is a good sign. But as I spoke to Enos last time, well, it does say on the Attorney General's website that you do have the right to bring about a private prosecution. And if the justice finds that there is enough evidence to bring the charges forward, then he will issue a summons for the police, and they will have to come to court. Now, private prosecution would be the police defending themselves against the accuser, which would be Enos. That would be how that would normally work. That would be a private prosecution. Otherwise, the state is the prosecutor, and that's not a private prosecution. That's a state prosecution. So this is an opportunity for the so-called man, but that doesn't work in this case either, because the court doesn't recognize the man, but it's about as close as you're ever going to get, this private prosecution. So while it sounds good on the outside, once you read through the Attorney General's office website under private prosecution, you will find so far so good. The justice said, yep, let's go. Now on Wednesday he has to go to court, and they're going to have a discussion there about what they're going to do, I guess. And that's when the Crown walks into the room and literally takes over the private prosecution. So therefore, it's not a private prosecution anymore. Therefore, it's impossible to have a private prosecution if the Crown gets involved in it, if the Crown has the authority to take over the case. The Crown also has, even though the justice said there was enough evidence to bring these charges forward, come Wednesday, it's going to be up to the Crown to decide whether or not it's in the public interest or if there's a reasonable chance of conviction. And I saw a story of, what is his name, Fantino, who was a big-time cop here. I think he works for the UN now, was charged with assault or something, and same thing, somebody had him charged with assault. And I just saw this past week in a paper somewhere that the Crown got involved and decided that it was not in the public interest to continue with these charges, so dismiss the charges against Fantino. And I'm afraid that's what's going to be attempted come Wednesday up in Owen Sound. In fact, I know that's what's going to be attempted. We've been around these courts enough to know just how exactly these guys operate, and it is not in the public interest. It is in the public interest as long as we're talking about the Crown or the head of state. In that sense of public, yes, it is in the public interest not to go ahead. because if you go ahead with these things, you take the lid off Pandora's box. So they want to keep that lid on best they can. So after the show, I shall be trying to get hold of Enos, I guess, which will be fine with me. It'll be interesting to see what he's come up with. Now, I have always been, I've been accused of being black and white in the past, a lot, since I was quite young, actually. And it was always somehow bad to look at things black and white. I never understood that. You know, one is right and one is wrong. So what happens in the middle? Well, what happens in the middle is we color things, okay? And we allow them to be somehow acceptable. And, well, that's not black or white then. That's not right or wrong. Well, there's lots of different shades, I was told, of right and wrong. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Either it's right or it's wrong. Take your pick. You know, if you harm me, that's wrong. But when you color it, you can harm me in this way or that way, but it's really not harm because, well, we colored it. It's more of a gray area. You hear that a lot, more of a gray area. And this is how they con people into accepting things they ought not to have accepted. So when I was looking around, I got looking around at masses last night, late, very late. We had people here last night. I didn't do my show last night, but later on, I didn't get to bed till after 3 sometime. I had something in my mind. I woke up yesterday morning, sometimes just before I wake completely, things I've been thinking about, it's things will tend to clarify themselves a little bit for me, just in that spot where you're kind of semi but not awake yet. You just that last little bit of, like, I don't dream much. It's usually I get these things come to me just before I wake. And, prime example of that is I was trying to get film of a wind farm because everybody was complaining about the noise. And it's true. You have to have the right atmospheric conditions. You have to have the right wind conditions. And so forth. So those people that live there all the time will have something to complain about by the time the wind company or somebody else shows up. Something has changed, and the noise doesn't seem to be so unacceptable. And I was bound and determined I wanted some film of this. I got to figure out why these people are moving out of their houses and stuff. I know there's a lot of stray voltage banging around the places that were making people crazy, making the animals crazy. But the noise is what was really, I couldn't get it, you know. I could hear this kind of a quiet whoosh, whoosh, whoosh thing, which I suppose if you're listening to it all the time, it get under your skin. But people were complaining about much louder sounds, and it sounded like jet airplanes and stuff. And I had never experienced that. And I've been around a lot of wind farms. So, one Sunday morning, I was snoozing away, and I basically, I guess I kind of sat up pretty quick and jumped out of bed, and I said, "What are you doing?" I go back to bed. It's early. I said, "I can't. I got to go film the windmills right now." "What are you talking about?" I said, "This is the day." "How do you know?" "I don't. I just got told, go take the pictures, go take the film of the wind farm." So I did. And nailed it. I don't know why I was that morning that I was supposed to go do that, but I went and did it. and I got what I was looking for. So I got thinking about black and white a little bit again, and you know, if you look up the meaning of black in Webster's, dismal, gloomy, forbidding, like darkness, destitute of moral light or goodness, atrocity, wicked, cruel, mournful, calamitous, horrible, expressing menace or discontent, threatening, sullen, forbidding as to regard one with bad looks, and so on and so forth. And when you look at white, it's the opposite. It's the exact opposite. And black is all colors, and white is no color. And law is not to be colored. Man is not to be colored. Okay, so got back looking at the some of the masses and stuff, right? And if I can find those, it's kind of interesting. Actually, it got real interesting because of what I found was that this morning or late last night. If I can dig that stuff up again. There's okay. Now here's an interesting site that I'm actually going to put in the chat. And I came across this last night when I was actually looking at masses. And I don't think I've ever heard of this place before. It's called the Thomas More Guild. Thomas More Guild. Now, Thomas More was back in the time of, I think, Henry VIII. And they do the Red Mass. Now, this Thomas More Guild is in Toronto. It's a lawyers' guild of Toronto. Now, I usually focus in on the Law Society of Upper Canada. But the Red Mass is a mass. Well, let me read some of this to you. The Thomas More Lawyers Guild of Toronto invites you to celebrate the 93rd Annual Red Mass to mark the opening of Ontario's courts. October 1st, 2015, celebrant and homilist His Eminence Thomas Cardinal Collins, Archbishop of Toronto. Now, a lot of people say the courts are just a church, which is true. So reception and dinner. This this took place at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. Now, isn't that funny? Mount Carmel. Isn't that the place? Isn't that what was? Oh no, Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. Wasn't it Mount Carmel? Wasn't it Carmel? Wasn't that what was called the compound they burned down in Waco? Wasn't that at Carmel? I think so. Could be wrong, but I think that's what it was. So the reception and dinner, guest speaker, Honorable George Strathy, Chief Justice of Ontario. Location, Osgoode Hall. The history of the Red Mass. The Thomas More Lawyers Guild of Toronto traces its history back to the 13th century with the initiation of the Red Mass. In the Cathedral of Paris in 1245, a Mass was held to invoke the guidance of the Holy Spirit on the judges of the ecclesiastical courts. It is believed the first liturgy was celebrated in honor of St. Ives of Britannia, the patron saint of lawyers. The practice of the Red Mass spread to England in 1310 during the reign of King Edward I. The entire bench and bar attended this special acoustic, at the beginning of the spring term of court. The name Red Mass became a tradition because of the red robes worn by the judges and the red vestments worn by the priests. Okay, is there a bit of a joining there between the church and the courts? The Red Mass has been held out annually in Westminster Cathedral, London, since 1904. The Red Mass was first held in Toronto in 1925. Its sponsorship was assumed by the Guild of Our Lady of Good Counsel in 1931 and by the Thomas More Lawyers Guild of Toronto since 1968. One of the primary objectives of the Thomas More Lawyers Guild of Toronto is the sponsorship of the Red Mass. So that's kind of like your courts. Now, they also have a Blue Mass, and the Blue Mass is basically for the police. The Red Mass is not just for judges. The Red Mass is also okay. The Red Mass is really I lost that link. I'll have to get it again. The Red Mass is a mass celebrated annually in the Catholic Church for judges, attorneys, law school professors, students, and government officials. The Mass requests guidance from the Holy Spirit for all who seek justice and offers the opportunity to reflect on what Catholics believe is the God-given power and responsibility of all in the legal profession. Okay? The Catholics believe that the lawyers and the judges and the attorneys and government officials and law school professors have a God-given power and responsibility of all in the legal profession. Wait a minute. So who's exactly, these people have God-given powers. So when you're walking into a court, look out. Originating in Europe and during the High Middle Ages, the Red Mass is so called from the red vestments worn in symbolism of the tongues of fire, the Holy Spirit that descended the apostles at Pentecost, Acts 21:4, or 2:1-4. Its name also exemplifies the scarlet robes worn by royal judges that attended the Mass centuries ago. In many countries of the Protestant tradition, such as England and Wales and Australia, a similar church service is held to mark the start of the legal year, with judges customarily wearing the ceremonial regalia. The first recorded Mass was celebrated in the Cathedral of Paris in 1245. In certain localities in France, the Red Mass was celebrated in honor of St. Ives, the patron saint of lawyers. From there it spread to most European countries and England around 310. And so we have these Red Masses all over the place. So when I look more at this Thomas More outfit, now this is a lawyers guild, right? It's a lawyers guild. And there's so much interesting stuff in here. I got to put this into the chat because I want everybody to go through this thing. I want everybody to read what's in here. I want everybody to understand what it is they're reading. It says a whole lot of really important stuff. It's almost like a confession. It is a confession. From the lawyers, they confess that they're deceivers, and it's funny that they do that because now I got to go find it again. But it's funny that they do this because you would think they would be smarter than all that, but apparently not. And I'll tell you why. One of the This is no. So I'll do it this way first. The Thomas More Lawyers Guild of Toronto is an association of Catholic lawyers and judges. The guild has three aims. First, it assists its members to integrate their spiritual and professional lives. The guild sponsors Toronto Annual Red Mass. Yep. Gives members an opportunity to socialize. Third, by its existence, the guild bears witness to the fact that there is no contradiction between the Catholic faith and the profession of law. We can be, as St. Thomas More professed himself, the king's good servant, but God's first. Now, they twist this as well as we go through some of this. In each of these aims, the guild models itself on its patron, St. Thomas More, lawyer, judge, statesman, scholar, writer, husband, father, martyr, saint. Thomas More truly was, as his friend Erasmus described him, a man for all seasons. He rose to become London's leading barrister, Chancellor of England, and renowned scholar, yet devoted himself to the education of his children and tirelessly defended the Catholic Church. He was martyred when he refused to acknowledge King Henry VIII as head of the church. So this guy, who is where the name Thomas More Lawyers Guild came from, was hung, and then I guess the old way of doing that, before he was dead or completely unconscious, they would drop him down and then disembowel him while he was still alive, and then cut off his head, and then quarter him. Kind of a gruesome situation. But the funny part is none of these lawyers stood up for the guy that they've got as the head of their guild, or the reason for the guild. I find this absolutely amazing. Now, there's some publications. If you go to that link, there's some publications here, and I think this first one here really spells it out. An iconic lawyer. I think this is the one. And this talk was delivered to members of the Thomas More Lawyers Guild at the Thomas More Day Dinner, 22nd of June, 2010. Janie Langdon is the William J. Bennett Professor Emerita of Christianity and Culture at the University of Toronto and the founder of the Christian and Culture program at the University of St. Michael's College. Well, that sounds all impressive till you read through this nonsense. And I'm gonna, because I got lots of time. The patron saint of lawyers in France is St. Ives. In the popular version of this fact, St. Ives was canonized because he was the rarest of birds, an honest lawyer. The rarest of birds. These are lawyers writing this crap. St. Ives was the rarest of birds, an honest lawyer. Well, that is pretty freaking rare, isn't it? But we should not chuckle too fast, they go on. Thomas More, however prudent and gifted for diplomacy, did in fact lose his head precisely because he wanted to remain an honest lawyer. A true man of law, not the legal system, a man of law, not a human enslaved in the legal system, but in fact he wanted to remain an honest lawyer, a true man of law. And for that, well, they knocked his head off. Why is the legal profession intrinsically both so fascinating and, yes, so dangerous? More's witness will serve us as a focus for the meditation on this topic. More was a humanist, a close friend of Erasmus, which means he joined in the struggle to reform a society, the corruption of which was blatant, as is today, absolutely blatant corruption, at a time when change was blowing in the wind. But he chose to eschew the enlightened scholar's approach to this project, an approach which his friend had chosen and which has served so well. He threw himself instead into the dangerous fray of the English court. This choice was a natural continuation of the course More had taken at the start of his career, joining the legal profession rather than monastic life, to which he was deeply attracted and which he had experienced among the Carthians. Not that More had any illusion about the probability of success as counselor to the great and guardian of the law, with a great humor and brilliant utopia, gives us glimpses of the reasons for his choice. The dream country of utopia is so peaceful, logical, orderly, and prosperous is indeed nowhere. And should it exist, that would be at the cost of dictatorship and isolation from the rest of mankind. When they chose the practice of law over a life of contemplation and insight, or why they did it, because law, no less than monistic life or philosophy, is dedicated to reform in the name of an ideal not yet achieved, the reign of justice, as distant from our experience as the reign of God. Unlike the other two, however, the lawyer is fully involved in the concrete. He chooses full immersion in the chaos of the present in order to help alleviate it, while the monk flees the world and attempts to reform it by reforming himself first. Lawyers work on the dangerous edge where the ideal attempts to take flesh. More had enough access to the world and the attendant corruption to have little illusion about bringing about true reign of law to his beloved England. Okay, the true reign of law. Okay, we don't have law. Outrageous pomp contrasting with the misery of the poor, hypocrisy, treason, and violence in high places were blatant. This made reform all the more necessary. This called for action. Become a lawyer, a political figure, offered a venue to ensure that only the lesser evil would occur. More hoped his advice to the great would dampen their abuse of pride and power. By defending the law, he could manipulate to a point the players on the world stage, players on the world stage, and make England a more human society. Okay. Professor Solano used to say that the highest form of theology is canon law, because not only did it affirm God's call to humanity, it attempted to give it concrete status in the face of its failure to take hold. Similarly, the secular lawyer must have the courage to hold on to truth, even when facing an intractable world. He is called to come up with a viable modus vivendi for transcendence in real time. He must be creative enough to find the least harmful compromise. He must have the sense of humor to laugh at the paradoxical distance between his ideal, his vocation, and his achievement. He is the builder and protector of the law of the land, and thus makes it more difficult for citizens to do evil and easier for them to see the good. I love this stuff. He, the lawyer, is the builder and protector of the law of the land. So who's running us? Lawyers and bankers. And thus makes it more difficult for citizens to do evil. Okay? So lawyers tell us what we can and can't do. Even though this is a Catholic lawyers guild, and if they read, they would see that God gave man dominion over his creation. Not the lawyers, not the bankers, but man. But they use the word human in here an awful lot. So they can't be working off the King James Bible, of which the Queen took the oath, because legal and law, legal and human, those two words don't exist in the King James Bible. Anyways, the law may be an ass. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but it is still the fundamental bulwark of patiently built generation after generation by courageous lawyers to help humanity grow slowly out of self-inflicted chaos. Man did not put himself into chaos, okay? The legal system, the bankers and the kings and the popes are the ones who inflicted the chaos. So to say that these lawyers at the Thomas More Law Guild are in any way, shape, or form honest is a big stretch. Naturally, an endeavor this paradoxical, entails tremendous risk. The greatest of these, in fact, is becoming enmeshed one's self in the vast mess one hopes to alleviate. The better one succeeds, the greater the pressure of wealth and pride, the greater the temptation simply to rejoin the culture one is attempting to challenge. More's personal life was therefore a long struggle to discipline himself, first for the inevitable struggle, intellectually, physically, and spiritually. He rose at 3 a.m. in the morning, examined his conscience carefully daily, went to morning mass, read and wrote. He wanted to be fit for his public performance, to be true to his call. And his call was simply to uphold the law. The law states specifically, I'm talking law now, not legal, okay? The law is the word of God, which these Catholics say they are protecting, which in fact they're not. And that says, do not take away or add to my word, which is the law. Okay, so that's exactly what the lawyers do. They add to and take away from the law. They're called the legal system, and put themselves in the position of transforming our world. For then as now, lawyers, qua guardians of the law, had to be their culture's reality check, and no one likes reality checks. They were called to challenge a deeply hypocritical society, an artificial culture, the virtual reality of the court, a political correctness stronger even than ours, since breaching it could lead to the stake. Okay? It is a hypocritical society, it is an artificial culture, and it is a virtual reality of the court, because it's all frickin' made up. And it is all artificial, and it is all fictional. But these guys trying to write this, I don't know, could another lawyer read this and not see what's being said in these words, in these paragraphs, in these sentences? Could a real lawyer read through this and not get it? Are they that stupid? Or is this for someone like me to trip over and read and go, oh, I see, they're really good guys. I see what they're up to. Okay, we should really bow down to the lawyers and the bankers and the kings and the queens because, well, they care. They struggle. But at the time, lawyers had to make justice believable. I love it. I love that sentence. But at the time, lawyers had to make justice believable. They had to make believable the hope that there can be such a thing as justice beyond vengeance, that we can aim for the common good beyond self-vindication. This, by the way, is why lawyers are, to this day, resented by the hoi polloi. Now, I didn't look that word up. Somebody must know what it means. I'm sure it means us. Oh, it won't even let me highlight the damn thing. I'll look it up later. HOIPOLLOI, which would be the common political, maybe. I don't know what the hell that means. Almost as much, let's see here. This is, by the way, why the lawyers are to this day resented by the, I guess, common people almost as much as priests, and for the same reason. We bank on them to reignite our hope in the victory of truth over confusion, of the good over corruption, but they often fail to provide anything more than power trips, self-vindication, or an apology for the status quo. Well, that's because they're the deceivers. We often hear it said that More is remembered not for his life, but for his death, not as a lawyer, but as a martyr. His beheading, however, was the long-expected and fitting conclusion to a carefully orchestrated public life. Though fully aware of the envy of his peers and the capricious and murderous violence of his future boss, More eventually accepted the most dangerous roles as a lawyer could take on, advisor to the monarch. It was a chance to alter the direction of English society in a period of great change. It was also his moment in the limelight. So he could propose to the public a personal image as close to the ideal Christian humanist as possible. Justice is what the man does, said Aristotle, through his writings, lifestyle, family situation, personal appearance, and also through his death. Thomas More molded himself into a Renaissance avatar of the just man. True guardian of the law, he uses legal skills to make England into a society in which every person could act out his or her personal conscience, so that every English man or woman could more easily be a just man or woman like himself. Okay? So with the law, okay, you don't need this whole idea of a legal system is a joke, but the point I think More was trying to get at is that the men and women are the responsible parties. Okay, we don't need all of this nonsense, as they said earlier, on how to, keep us away from being evil or whatever it was they said. Okay, More played that role to the bitter end. He knew well that once Anne Boleyn had entered Henry's life, no advice would curb his master, but he also knew that the issues at stake, England's a pretense to universal church and freedom of conscience, were worth risking it all, so he did. His death was simply the last act of his life, its stamp of authenticity. Let us then focus for a moment on More's last years and watch the unfolding of the events leading to this memorable death. On May 15, 1532, the king convoked his bishops at Canterbury. They were to accede to unprecedented demands, which would reduce the English church into little more than an agent and ward of the state. Led by the aging Archbishop Warham, 6 of the bishops present and many of the abbots yielded, and the submission of the clergy was ratified. Within a few hours, Thomas More tendered his resignation as Lord Chancellor. By December, Anne Boleyn was pregnant. The king and his mistress were secretly married on January 25th, 1533. Warham had died. Cornwall, the king's faithful servant, had been named archbishop. On May 23rd, the English church declared Henry's marriage to Anne Boleyn to be licit. On June 1st, she was crowned Queen of England. More did not come to the ceremony and kept quiet. The king would not give up on getting More's public approval, however. On February 15th, 1534, More was summoned before 4 members of the king's council who offered him honor and wealth should he sanction the divorce and remarriage of his majesty. He refused. The council turned to threat. More was told of a new accusation. The king regretted having written so strongly against Luther in favor of the popes. Okay, so that's Martin Luther, who he burned. He was given a summons to the Pope, and he burned that sucker in favor of the Pope's authority. And More had been the instigator of this mistake. More demonstrated they had merely answered questions the king put to him on this matter as best he could. He knew, however, that he had sealed his death warrant. On his return, he was so merry that his son-in-law, Roper, asked him why. More answered, "I have given the devil a foul fall, and with those lords I have gone so far, as without great shame I can never go back again." Once and for all, More had made it impossible for himself to act in the future against his conscience. In March 1534, the Parliament passed the Act of Succession, declaring the children of Henry and Anne to be legitimate successors to the throne, and marriage to Catherine to be null. Anyone refusing to take the amended oath, or the appended oath rather, would be charged with treason, drawn and quartered. More was summoned to Lambeth to take the oath. He encountered there a group of clerics merrily swearing, could not be budged through Chancellor, though Chancellor Audley told him in dismay that he was the first person to refuse to swear. For an instant, More seemed shaken by Craner's argument that he ought to follow his known duty to obey his king rather than perish in his own uncertain dissenting opinion. But he reminded Cranmer that alone or not, he could no more deny his own conscience than Cranmer could deny his own. More's irrevocable decision to be true to his own grasp of justice to the point of martyrdom had been then fully internalized. This had become clear to More on the way from his beloved Chelsea to Lambeth. According to Roper, while sitting sadly in the boat taking him there, More had suddenly rounded Roper in the ear and said, "Son Roper, I thank our Lord, the field is won." And won it remained. The last days of 1534, Parliament passed the Acts of Supremacy and the Act of Treason, which made it an offence punishable by death to deny the king his title as supreme head of the Church of England. On April 28, 1535, 3 priors were hanged, drawn, and quartered because they had refused to recognize Henry VIII as supreme head of the Church. Faced with this dreadful example of what happened to the others, More was interrogated on April the 30th by 5 councillors, presided by Cromwell. The act stated that anyone who might maliciously wish, will, or desire by words or writing or by craft deprive the royal family of their dignity, title, or name, or slanderously pronounce by express writings or words that the king, our sovereign lord, should be a heretic, would be punished as a traitor. More thus chose to keep silence on this issue. Cromwell said that the king ordered him to speak his mind. More answered the king knew well what he thought, since More had ever from the beginning, well and truly from the time to time, declared his mind unto his highness. From then on, More added, he was determined neither to study nor meddle with any matter of the world. Cromwell pointed out that More's demeanor in that matter of likelihood made now other men so stiff therein as they be. The king would have More's submission or his life. More's final reply was a last appeal to keep the law of England just. And this next sentence is brilliant. I do nobody harm. I say none harm. I think none harm, but wish everybody good. And if this be not enough to keep a man alive in good faith, I long not to live. But the law was no longer able to keep the worst from happening. So Thomas More, in prison, prepared for death, girding his loins against possible apostasy, knowing, as he told his daughter Margaret, how weak and afraid of pain he was. Though he knew he was already condemned, he fought for his life to the end with all his legal skills. Why? To make sure that he himself was not grandstanding as a martyr, but also for the sake of the law, that it remained true to itself, and for the men of law who were about to condemn him, that they return to respect their own conscience. His defense was simple and based upon his silence. He reminded his judges that neither your law nor any law in the world is able justly and rightly to punish me unless you may beside lay to my charge either some word or some fact indeed. In things touching conscience, every true and good subject is more bound to have respect to his said conscience and to his soul than to any other thing in all the world. On July the 1st, More appeared at Westminster Hall, indicted on 4 counts. He managed to have the first 3 dropped. He was finally condemned on the 4th. The accusation that he had explicitly denied Parliament's authority to declare the king supreme head of the Church of England. This was supported by the fault witness of Rich. More, Rich testified, had told him Parliament could no more make the king supreme head of the church than declare God was not God. More skillfully discredited this testimony, and 2 more witnesses were called. They had been in the cell at the time of Moore's conversation with Rich, moving out Moore's books and papers. Both of them avoided the issue, saying they had paid no attention to what was being said, so busy were they taking Moore's stuff away. Though there obviously was no visible evidence against Moore, the jury took only 15 minutes to render the verdict guilty. As Lord Chancellor Audley began to pass sentence, Moore attempted a last maneuver. He called for an arrest of judgment, demanding his right to speak, why this judgment should not be given against him. This would be his first and last opportunity to give the conscience of his country a living voice. In a passionate speech, he gave his judges a last chance to remember their personal responsibilities as guardians of England's law by questioning the legitimacy of the law they were using to condemn him before it was too late. He argued that England, a single realm of Christendom, could no more make a law disagreeing with the general law of Christ's universal church than the City of London would make a law against the Act of Parliament binding the whole realm. Henry's demands amounted to calling for the church's surrender of its spiritual autonomy into his hands. Moore pointed out that this was a flagrant breach of the 1225 Magna Carta, which stated that the English church still shall be free and have all its rights undiminished and liberties unimpaired. In fact, it violated the king's own coronation oath. Things were getting too hot. Audley interrupted him. How could he alone challenge the unanimous viewpoint of all the bishops, universities, and best learned of this realm? Moore answered that, should numbers matter, they were probably more holy men alive and dead on his side than on Audley's. Shaken and loath to have the burden of that judgment wholly to depend on himself, Audley openly asked the advice of Lord Fitzjames, then Lord Chief Justice of the King's Bench, whether this indictment was sufficient or not. There was dead silence for some time. Chief Justice Fitzjames finally broke it. My lords all, I must confess that if the Act of Parliament is not unlawful, then is not the indictment of my conscience insufficient. Ponder that sentence for a moment with its double negatives. What a cop-out. And how horrifying that general refusal to accept obvious responsibility for the greatest lords of the realm to mere servants. Moore was in that room, the lone witness to justice. Audley then completed his task. Lo, my lords, you hear what my Lord Chief Justice says, and he immediately gave judgment against Moore. He would be hanged till half dead, cut down, his bowels taken out, his head cut off, and body quartered into 4 parts to be set up where the king should appoint. The last chance to check King Henry's power grab was gone. Once again, tyranny has succeeded, not through war, but through law. Not at the hands of the criminals, but of famous lawyers. Not through the force of evil, but through the negligence and cowardice of those who considered themselves good and responsible. The law entitled Moore to the last word. He did not ask for mercy, but offered forgiveness, like the blessed Apostle Paul was present and consented to the death of St. Stephen and kept their clothes that stoned him to death, and yet be they now both twain holy saints in heaven. So I verily trust that though your lordships have now been on earth, now here on earth, been judges to my condemnation, we may hereafter in heaven merrily all meet together to our everlasting salvation. I desire Almighty God to preserve and defend the King's majesty and to send him good counsel. This was his last offer of human kinship to the judges, his last reminder to them and to us that they too were still free and responsible to the law, traitors or not, and they should not give up because of this one fall on being true guardians of the law as he attempted to be himself. Moore was beheaded on July the 6th and went to the scaffold jesting. Indeed, miraculously, the field had been won. An officer lent him a hand as he mounted the stairs, and Moore quipped, "When I come down again, let me shift for myself as I can." He died as he lived, in good humor, having reconciled in himself through his death the opposite ends of the human paradox, the king's good servant, but God's first. Then we go here, and it says, did Thomas More die for nothing? From a practical standpoint, More had lost. By the next summer, Cromwell was plundering and destroying England's monasteries. Politically driven religious fanaticism was tearing up Christendom, and Europe was putting into question by the viciousness of its religious wars the very worth of Christianity. And yet his very last work, De Tristita, a meditation on Christ's passion, which fanned his courage into flame during his last days in the tower, ends on a possible answer to our question. Who can know how many have been helped by those whom we see face death with fear and trembling, but who we also observe as they break bravely through the hindrances blocking their path, the obstacles barring their way, with barriers harder than steel, that is their own weariness, fear, and anguish, who by bursting these iron bars and triumphing over death takes heaven by storm. For More's most powerful witness to justice may be not that he argued as a successful lawyer, politician, and humanist, but that he wrote in his captivity and his acceptance of his death, for he left us a careful record of what he went through while awaiting torture and death, struggling alone with what Christians call the flesh and the world. So here's what we basically have, is we have, and I believe, I can't remember right off the top, but I think it was Henry VIII. It was one of the Henrys that was taken and given kind of a talking down to by the Pope, and basically Henry handed it over to the Pope, and may have had a lot to do with this. But the basic point of this story on this law site is that here you had a lawyer who understood the law. He understood the law as by taken by the oaths. He understood that. Okay? Just like, what's his name? Jean Bodin in the 1500s stated that he also believed in a monarchy. He had no use for democracy, but the monarchy, and that was based on the rights of kings, the divine rights of kings. But it ended. The divine right of the kings to rule only went as far as they do not cross the law, okay? That they do not add to or take away from the word. Because once the kings or the queens have crossed that line, they are no longer in law. They have now entered into tyranny. And I think this is what More was trying to show these people. But these were weak men. More was a strong man. He stood his ground. He was a real man. He stood his ground. You know, it's the same thing that it was Socrates, right? They found him guilty. What was it? What was his crime? He was merely asking people to think. And through thinking, they were forced to ask questions. And once you have a question, you best go find the answer, which makes you think more, which makes you answer more question, which leads you to the truth. And truth is the enemy of the state. And these other lawyers knew this. So did they stand up for the truth? No, they bowed to the state. Okay, so these are not honorable. This is not an honorable profession by any stretch of the imagination. The legal system has no honor. because it is outside of the law. It has crossed the law. It has left the law and entered into tyranny. And that's what we live under, tyranny. You know, both More and Socrates had no fear, really, of death, especially Socrates, right? He did what he did because he knew what he did was right. Okay, and that's the difference between black and white. These other lawyers in the story, you know, instead of standing in the light, with light in the white, allowed themselves to be colored, to be tainted, because they weren't brave enough, they weren't man enough to stand up for what was right. So they capitulated. And by doing so, the entire world has become enslaved. And this we have to change somehow. We have to change it. The beauty of it is that we do have the internet. You know, is a toolbox, is a wonderful toolbox. Not enough people use it as a toolbox or a library. It's an extremely powerful thing, the internet. If you use it for what it was really built for. The internet was not built for an entertainment tool. I mean, the original internet was put together for a research tool. And when I said way back and when we first got the internet, when I first started using it as a research tool, I was the happiest camper in town. You know, I was going through documents that would have taken me, well, I would have had to drive 2-3 hours to get to a proper library. To get my hands on the information, then spend probably days wading through reference books. And all of a sudden, people are putting up research. There were no ads, you know. It was no entertainment. And slowly, you know, the ads started to come. And I said way back then, you know, this, and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought they were going to. There was a period there that got a little harder to research because they were starting to bury the stuff as the companies were putting up money to bring their sites up to the top all over the place. It did get a little more complicated. But the internet is completely degenerated for the most part into a cesspool. You know, if you don't have your blockers on, I mean, you're probably going to come up with more porn than you could hope to ever find, or why you would ever hope to find it is beyond me. But it's just degenerated into a total circus, and that's unfortunate. So you really need to know what you're looking for when you go researching for it, because if you get this stuff, I listened to this, it was really popular, and then that just opens your mind. Oh, my friend says it's really popular, so I listened to it. And no back checking on nothing, no research, no questions asked. Just open that mind and let it flow in, thinking you're being informed. Well, you're being informed, but it may not be the right form, and so you get lost in the nonsense again. Anyways, this is the ending of this story, and I wish people would go through the other stories or the other talks that were given by these people. It really does open your eyes up to the fact that the lawyers that wrote this stuff are liars. They have to know they're lying. They have to know what they're doing is wrong. They're writing a story about a guy who stood up for the law when the other lawyers capitulated, and somehow, you know, Moore's a martyr, and see, this is why we can't do it like Moore, right? I guess that's their excuse. It's an excuse paper. Anyways, very, very beautiful, the story, as you may say, but what has this to do with Moore, the lawyer, the topic of this paper? Remember the beginning of Moore's career, the choice not to take flight into ideas, but to tackle chaos at its most blatant in the name of justice, not in the name of abstract. And that's what legal is. Legal is abstract. Legal is fiction. Legal are things thought up in the mind. Okay? Not take flight into ideas. The choice not to take flight into ideas, but to tackle chaos at its most blatant in the name of justice, not in the abstract, but where words meet blood and gold. He knew this meant risking his own body, but also his own soul. If the lure of power and conspicuous luxury, if the fear of violent evil became overwhelming, he would bow down to it, just like the entire legal system has. He also knew, having no illusions about human nature, that eventually this would leave him terribly alone. And that's true. I mean, it's a lonely road. Anybody that has been at this for any length of time, even people who just today, maybe, today, or over the Christmas holidays, or the pagan holidays, whatever you want to call it, and that's what we said to ourselves Christmas Day here, me and my wife. She said, Merry whatever day. That's what we've come to. But people who original, maybe it happened on the Christmas holidays. Maybe somebody a week before the holidays was asking a question and went and did a little research, and then he's with his family during the holidays, and he's trying to explain stuff to people, and they look like him, like he's got 3 heads or something. And if he persists, he will find himself very lonely in that particular family. And that's exactly what happened to Moore in his lawyer's family. Okay, the so-called law found himself very lonely, became an outcast. Why? Simple. He was speaking the truth. And truth, again, is the enemy of the state. Now, fast forward from Moore's time to this time, and this is why I say we win. Okay, because of this internet, this toolbox, this brilliant research tool that we have at our disposal, and the fact that people are asking more and more questions every day as the world gets more chaotic, we aren't alone anymore. Okay, we aren't alone anymore. We have brothers and sisters on every corner of this globe doing the same thing we're doing here today. And we will win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because the time has come for us to win. And I think they think we're supposed to win. By reading what this lawyer had to say, it's like they want us to step up to the plate because they're too weak to step up to the plate. They're too weak. They proved it. They proved it back in Moore's time, and they continue to prove it today. They're weak, spineless, pathetic excuses for men and women of law. They know they're not dealing in law. They couldn't write this paper without understanding the difference between law and legal. They couldn't do it. So anyways, the choice, let's see here, we are. He knew his meant risking his own body, but his own soul, in the lure of power and conspicuous luxury, if the fear of violent evil became overwhelming, that's fear. He also knew, having no illusions about human nature, that eventually this would leave him terribly alone, to the point of questioning his own rationality. And see, they use that today, right? People who speak the truth, they're looking to get into court and have them have mental assessments and whatnot, and they attempt to get people to question their own rationality. So nothing's really changed. Love Love of the church, love of England, love of the law, love of man helped him transcend his loneliness and find the courage to incarnate perfectly the justice he lived for an acceptance of his own death. As Psalms 85 sings, there are moments when justice and peace embrace, when faithfulness reaches up from the earth and righteousness leans down from heaven. Such moments are our most precious heritage, and Thomas More carved one of them into history. Let us mediate them. They remain our best chance to conquer despair and cowardice in our struggle for justice, in our own effort to become worthy of our call as lawyers and as human beings to bring the transcendent truth we love into reality. So, the lawyers are saying they are in despair, they're cowardice, and somehow transcend truth into reality. But it says truth we love into reality, and therefore I think is another twist in there, because after all these years, these people they have to know what law is, and they turn their back on law. They turn their back on Moore. They turned their back on Socrates. I mean, these were very, very well. These were extremely. What's the word I'm looking for? Men like these guys were highly respected. Moore was at the top of his game. All he had to do, he was the king's counsel, for God's sakes. All he had to do was play the game. He'd have been enriched beyond his wildest imagination, same as Socrates was in the Senate. But these men felt they had a duty to their fellow man. And I think the real people searching for the truth and searching for change and searching for a way back to law are all the same. They see white and they see black. They see right and they see wrong. And they refuse to go into that chaotic place of color, that place of deception, color of law, hue man. They're not going there. And we got to bring ourselves out of that and back to law and back to man. And then and only then can we start to undo all the bad that has been done on this planet since way, 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 way long time ago. But we can do it. It's something to shoot for. It sure beats watching TV. I was over at in-laws' place on the weekend, and they had this 600-inch screen TV or whatever the hell it is. It's freaking huge, the biggest TV I ever seen. And there's some stupid ass movie on there with some stupid ass actors. The Koreans are going to take over the White House, and it was just nothing but a bloodbath right from the get-go. And then they put on some comedy, which my wife and I just kind of said, this is not funny. This is not funny at all. And it kind of worried us because this is what people submit themselves to on a daily basis. Most people don't want to read anything anymore. Most people don't want to look anything up. They just want it handed to them. That's why it's so easy to deceive them. Right? Anyways, that's my show for today. I don't know if it made any sense to anybody. I hope it did. I hope we have a little better understanding of law. And I will be back here on Tuesday night from 7 to 8, and again on Thursday, 7 to 8. So I look forward to it. And again, I hope everybody, got to spend some quality time with their families. That's the most important thing. And a lot of your family members are not ready for any of this information yet, but you got to keep working with them. So everybody take care. Have a great day. And in 1 hour, Hal behind the woodsheds on. Tune in for that. I know I'm going to. Anyways, take care, everybody. We are out.
It's only for their mom. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn.